Hello, I'm Kathleen Crowley-Dembo from PickleVisor, and I'm here with Melissa McCurley, who is one of the most well-known tournament directors in America, I'd say, and been described as the hardest working woman in pickleball. Welcome, Melissa. Hello, welcome. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being here. I've read about how you got into pickleball, just playing in your driveway with family. Can you talk a bit how you got into running pickleball tournaments?
Yeah, so I was introduced to a lady by the name of Jenny Lanius back in 2014. It was May of 2014 to be exact. And her husband had created this software platform called pickleballtournaments.com just as a hobby to help him run and manage his club, which is a place called Happy Trails out in Arizona. And his software started to be known amongst some tournament organizers. And so what was a hobby began to become a business, and he and his wife, Jenny, did not want to have a business. And so I met Jenny after playing in the tournament with my mom, and after some ladies asked me to come and play on a Sunday, because my mom and I did quite well in the tournament. So I guess they felt they could invite me to their group. So they did. And Jenny approached me about having interest in this software. Now, keep in mind, I had built almost a 20-year career running large global infrastructures. And I was the global service delivery executive in charge of all the infrastructure for American Express based there in Phoenix. So I wasn't looking to go be a part of pickleball or even own a piece of software. But my brother and I, he was also in technology, we said, let's take a look at this software. And, in which we did, we evaluated it for about 3 months that year and made a decision to go ahead and buy it. And certainly, as people have heard, our lives changed forever. And I decided to walk away from my almost 20-year IT career. I did continue to do both launch and pickleballtournaments.com, I guess, beyond the hobby level to a business level, and continue to work at American Express for the first 3 years that I had gotten pickleballtournaments.com. And it really grew, exponentially from that date. We had like 93 tournaments on the system when we purchased it, and only 3 or 4 of them, if you were under the age of 50, you could even play. There was no such thing as professional pickleball. Mr. John Gullo, who is the original founder or father of Pro Pickleball, had started to try to launch something. I always tell him he was ahead of his time. But anyway, people back then mostly traveled around for fun. And since there were so few under 50s, everybody really knew each other. So that's just a kind of a quick how we got involved in it. And then it just really grew. So 15,000 players were on the system. There were about 93 tournaments worldwide at the time. And then the next year there were, 130 tournaments, then 250, then 400. And, the number of players that were in the database just continued to grow as well. So it was 2018 that I had a lot of investors coming my direction, wanting to invest or buy pickleballtournaments.com. And I had a really, what I call it, responsibility to do the legacy of Bob and Jetty proud. And I couldn't just partner with anybody. And at the time, it was hard to make a decision. Pickleball Central approached me. And when they did about coming together as partners, I knew I found the right partner to continue growing pickleballtournaments.com. So in 2018, we sold the business to Pickleball Central, merged our companies together, and this continued our growth from there.
So you stayed on for a while. But you retired, but the retirement didn't last too long, it sounds like.
No, because so at the end of 2021, Pickleball Central and pickleballtournaments.com were purchased by Dundon Capital Planning, Tom Dundon, who's out of Dallas. And so I stayed on for another 2.5 years, transitioning pickleballtournaments.com to pickleball brackets, which had some newer technology and allowed this tournament software to really evolve to support the ever-growing needs of a lot of tournament organizers in a way that brought it into modern day, if you will. I mean, pickleballtournaments.com was first built in 2004, so it's now over 20 years old. So you can imagine the updates and that it needed. So I made that transition, and then I guess it'll be 2 years ago this summer, I made the decision to retire. And when I did that, people just came out of the woodworks, if you will, really asking, hey, would you like to continue on? And I said, I need to take a breath. I've been all consumed for the last decade, literally all consumed. And so I took a breath, and Mr. Ken Herman, who founded the APP, and he had been my customer, and he and I worked closely together on many things over the years. He just wouldn't take no for an answer, right? So I came out of retirement, and now I'm running in the position of Executive Vice President of Competition for the APP.
And what does that entail? What's your role there?
Yeah, I oversee everything involved with the tour and the competition. Which involves registrations and scheduling and bracketing and things that I refer to as inside the lines as it relates to participating in pickleball. Those things that are outside the lines are typically things around the event operations and logistics itself. Everything that puts on the experience outside of actually being on the court playing. And I also oversee all the referees, all the pro play, the international relationships, and working closely with Ken and many other people on the APP in those areas.
Well, I would like to go back and talk to you about your experience as a tournament director, and you've probably run hundreds of tournaments. And these videos in my PickleVisor newsletter are for people who run tournaments and run events. And I'd just like to tap in and hear about your experience and some of the tips that you would share about that.
All right.
Well, the first one on that I would share. So when I bought a piece of software, I never expected to be anything but a software provider. But the need and the demand to have people come on and actually run tournaments for people was larger than anyone could have ever imagined. So for the first 3 or 4 years, I literally was going around the entire country pro bono, teaching people how to run events. And then as that continued, what we found is people continued to need that as support. So we had a service where people could hire people to run their tournament. So there was a difference in what I was actually doing and then what a tournament director does. And one of the things that I also always told folks from the get-go when they would contact us is there's 2 different things. And sometimes the tournament director, if you're running a real small tournament, can be both. They can be tournament director, and then it can be what I call tournament desk operator. But they are 2 very different things. Larger tournaments require those responsibilities to be held by 2 different people. And so your tournament desk operator is truly the one that's handling the software, handling registration management, handling bracketing, handling schedule, handling payments, and answering all the questions related to the players that are preparing and registering for and planning to attend your event. And the tournament director is you're just a piece of what the tournament director is overall responsible for, from venue selections to volunteers to marketing to sponsorships, to making decisions around what type of tournament you're going to run. Are you going to sanction your tournament? What are the expenses associated with your tournament? What are the revenues associated? Those are the things that the tournament director is actually responsible for, and which is a very broad scope. It sure is. So where would you start? I think in talking to you briefly before, you talked about start with your financials. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So if you're in a tournament director position and you're going to put on a tournament, you have to really understand what are your financial goals that you're required to achieve in putting that tournament together. Are you running a for-profit tournament? Are you running a charity tournament? Are you just looking to break even? Are you looking to gain some sort of awareness for your event, and you can actually invest in and maybe not make money on the event, but you're looking to get exposure perhaps to your club. So you really want to understand what it is that is driving your financials. And then from there, you need to understand what your sponsorship strategy is going to be if you need one. And then once you know what your expenses are going to be, what your sponsorships are going to be, then whatever grants. So some people also have access to grants to be able to help fund their tournaments in their local communities as well. And then you can back into what do you need to charge players to be able to achieve whatever goal you're trying to achieve. Tournament directors would call me many times and ask, well, what should I charge for my tournament? And I would have to go through all of the things that I just mentioned to you then. Once you have those answers, then you can back into what those fees are that you're going to charge. Venue fees, if you have them, are very expensive for people. So you really want to understand what those venue fees are going to be, depending on where in the world you're putting your tournament on as well. I know it costs me less to live in like Florida, which I don't live in Florida. Not now, I have lived twice, but it costs different to live in Florida than if I was living, in New York City. And so, I have to think about the demographics and where I'm running my events as well.
Do you have any rule of thumb on, say, if you have a $50 registration fee, what part of that goes to your T-shirts? What part goes to food at the venue? Do you have a kind of a rule of thumb of how much you expect to spend on a certain part of your cost?
I guess not really. I mean, because I would just say to look for people that are used to providing product to events so that you can get the best T-shirt pricing, so that you can look at food trucks and that sort, sure, providing food to your venues, or look for, we used to have just a local hot dog guy that had a hot dog stand, right? And he would come in without any charge, just to set up. And a lot of your food trucks and vendors won't have a charge, but yet they are expecting you to send, quite a bit of traffic through them.
Yes.
So yeah, and medals are very important. So looking for companies that have now a strong history in providing medals to pickleball. And, people like to have nice medals, but you want to make sure that you're not breaking the bank on them either. But that would be my, I guess, best advice. Really shop around, look for those that are used to supporting events, and get the best price you can. Best negotiation skills.
I was talking to a non-pickleball person and talking about the cost. And she said, "Oh, well, you don't need medals." And I'm like, "Oh, no, you need medals." People love medals.
They love them. And I have worked with a lot of tournament directors who have, what's the word? Experimented with other options besides medals. And people want their medals. They just do.
Yeah.
So,
for sure. Where are you based? Where are you living now?
South Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned thinking about the theme of your tournament. What do you mean by that?
So what kind of, I call them personalities, what kind of personality do you want to give around your tournament? And the personality can then help determine your formats as well. So is this a fun, just social event that you want people to mix around and have a good time? Or is this something that where you don't necessarily mix people around? They're actually signing up to play with partners that they have signed up to play with, but you want to give them as many games as possible, playing in some round robin type format. Do you want to give them a little bit more competitive feel for people who don't feel like round robin is a competitive flavor? So you could use those round robins to then actually go into some bracketed playoff, play as well, to help further scratch that competition itch that people have. And then if you're full on what I'll call competition type format, and you'll see these things like your US Open tournaments, your nationals tournaments, to where people are coming to compete in a double elimination type situation, to where if you want more games, you got to win. That's how you get them.
In all the tournaments that you've seen and been involved with, any personalities of those tournaments stand out? Anything special that you've seen?
Oh, well, I mean, the US Open is, it's, and I think you might have mentioned you're going to that one, right?
Yes, I am.
You are. Yeah.
Yes.
And it's your first one?
My first one. I've heard great things.
Yeah. So your first one, and after 9 years, it was my last one last year. So I'll miss you there. But It's one of those tournaments that created an experience for people that then put it on the bucket list for others to attend, not only here in the States, but around the world. And so they really help create an experience by, we call it a player village. People will actually stand in line with their tents ready to pop up. And so they have their right place. Marriage proposals have gone on inside of there, just friends and the opportunity to have open play in the evenings and connect with other people, the music, the food, the open air, championship court, the 60 courts that were dedicated for the game as well, and the opportunity to really provide an experience for everyone, whether they were amateurs, seniors, professionals, that sort. Making it the destination location that then really I'll take what Mr. Bello got started in pro pickleball and redefine it and take pro pickleball to another level, and is a place where the best amateurs from around the world come to compete as well. And the founders of that event wanted to keep it always open as an open tournament. So let's say if you go and win there this year, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're an automatic entry into the next year. And it was because they want everybody to have an equal opportunity to get a chance to participate. So that one, it also shaped so much of what I did in my own career that it'll always be the standout event for me. Well, as an operator, it was a very challenging event to do. So you always kept your skills honed throughout the year running other events just so that you could be, I guess, as sharp as you could be to run really with kind of the Super Bowl event of pickleball. So
Can't wait to experience it.
Yeah, I think you'll love it. Then another event that stands out for me happens to be the one right here in my community where I live. I came out here. I lived in Arizona for 10 years, and that's where I started my pickleball journey. But I came out here some 8 years ago to Sun City, Hilton Head, and they have a Low Country Classic pickleball tournament. And it is this year was their 10th year to run the tournament. And it's kind of for the East Coast, really the must attend amateur type event. And they just do such a great job with it. It's a round robin type event. They really try to close the age groups in as close as possible to give people the best competition in their age group. They do a low country boil. They have a lot of local vendors. They get, people that come all over from the East Coast, and they've just created a vibe around it that's full of fun. And people love to come to the Low Country area as well. There's plenty to do here with your families, whether it's, be beach, biking, visiting historical places. Savannah's not far. I mean, I sound like a tourism director. But anyway,
it sounds great.
It's a standout for me, and it would be a standout whether I moved here or not.
You mentioned having a sponsorship strategy. Can you tell me a little bit more about some different strategies?
Sure. Do you have a strategy to kind of hit your local community? Do you, have that strategy about going after grants? Do you have a strategy to, go after some national sponsorships? Some of that depends on the size of your venue as well. So usually people were running more local type, events. They're not looking to go after national type sponsors. They'll go after folks that are interested in their local communities. Perhaps some pickleball sponsors as well who are known nationwide, but yet maybe there's a particular market that they're wanting to break into. So they might go after those particular sponsors. But and if you do that, so paddles stand out in mine, right? Because everybody comes after the paddle manufacturers. But really, what is your local pro? I call your local pro your local hero. And typically whatever is in the hand of your local pro is what people are interested in using. So to really be able to penetrate some of those markets locally, you need to have a strategy that's around your local pro. And if you have one that you can sell that strategy then back to a particular sponsor, then you'll probably catch their attention more in the way of just saying, hey, will you throw some money my way or some product my way, right? So, and
Yeah.
know that too. What can you what is something that would be valuable. So when I talk about the Low Country, they partnered with it was Takaya, I think it was a couple of years ago, and people loved this. So Takaya donated bottles. And so in addition to your medal, if you got first or second place, you got a bottle as well. And so in that case, people loved the bottles, and people actually, and if you won, well, I should say this, if you won gold, you got a paddle. If you won silver, you got a bottle. Well, some people are like, I'd like to win silver to get the bottle. And of course, they got so someone won the bottle more than the paddle.
That's crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah. So so those are, I guess those are some of the things that you want to think about: financial versus, trade or just product donation, stuff like that.
What I hear from a lot of organizers is that finding sponsors is a huge struggle, and in particular, they want to get a little money to meet the financial goals of a tournament, whether it's charity or for profit. Any suggestions on how to basically ask for the money?
Yeah, well, you want to have a solid sponsorship package. So you want to put something together that really details what they would be getting from you and giving you money. So, and a lot of people will do different tier levels. So you might have a gold level standard, you might have a platinum level standard, silver level standard, bronze level standard, and each level would give people different levels of exposure and cost them, a different amount of money. And so a well-documented package that you could present to them, explain what value and benefit they're getting by sponsoring your tournament is really key. You don't want to just go ask somebody, hey, I'm running the tournament, can you give me $500? And then, wonder why they might say no, right? It's different than if you say, I'm running a tournament, here's my gold level package, it costs $500, but here's what you're going to get. Your company name's going to be on our t-shirt. You're going to, you send me your banner, it will be on our court, our main court, or, or if you can send us wristbands with your company name on it, every server and every player is going to get a wristband that has your company name on it. So those are just some tangible things that you could describe that would give them exposure to your players.
That's a great idea. Awesome. So if you can think back to your days at the tournament desk, what were your biggest pains as a tournament organizer?
Rain.
Yes.
Rain. Yeah.
For sure.
Rain is in any sort of weather impacts are going to be your biggest challenges. Simply because with pickleball, there can be some expectations around how to manage weather incidents, because you can move a pickleball tournament indoors. People don't often understand the challenges required to doing that. One, there has to be an indoor facility. Two, it has to be large enough. And three, it's going to cost you money. And most of the organizers, people, it's a myth where people think these event organizers are making a ton of money. You may know this, Kathleen.
I know this.
You know this. People are not making money running tournaments. They're lucky to get out of it unscathed. And if they make $1 or $2, good for them. But a lot of the people putting on these events are for the love of the game and, doing what it is that they're doing and helping contribute to further growing the sport. So some of these event organizers at some of your larger events have started to offer registration insurance to help protect people's registration fees if indeed they are impacted by rain, because moving indoors is not always an option. So,
right.
So that's important for people to know, and maybe some of your listeners who are actually players, maybe it'll help them with a different perspective when they're angry because it rains and they're not able to play any longer. So that would be the biggest pain. The next thing that I would say it can cause you a lot of pain is if you don't prepare properly for your event. I always told people that the biggest amount of work is just getting to the tournament. Actually, running the tournament's not so bad from a tournament desk operator perspective. But if you don't plan properly, you don't communicate properly, you don't schedule properly, then you're doomed for a negative experience when your players come in. So in planning is handling your registrations, having appropriate deadlines, making sure you're giving yourself enough time to create your brackets, and making sure that you have the knowledge to properly schedule your brackets, making sure that you're giving players enough time to prepare and plan for coming to your event. There is a high number of percentage of players, and it's somewhere between that 50 to 70%, depending on where you are, what your event is, that are coming to your event from more than 50 miles away. So they need to plan and prepare, whether they're hotel stays, whether they're, airplane tickets, things like that. So you want to give them some time, and the amount of that time reasonably is like within 7 days, no less than 5 days, to be able to put out an exact schedule of when people are going to play. I do tell folks that if you're playing on a certain date, plan to start as early as 5. Depending on how you're scheduling your tournament. If you're going as late as 8 o'clock, tell them don't plan as long as 8 o'clock. I can never tell them. I said, if you're 2 and done, or, you're done with your round robin and don't make the playoffs, you're having lunch somewhere else, right? But if you do well and you won't get onto your playoffs, you could be there late into the afternoon. So plan to be there all day as a player. As an organizer, make sure that you're doing everything that you can to make sure that you've planned and prepared properly to give your players a great experience. Make sure that you've thought about the overall player flow when they're checking into your event. I always think about check-in as like a Disney World experience. When check-in should be set up, ready, well before your first player is going to show up at the site and walking in, so that you're there with a smile and a welcome, and ready to answer any questions that they may have outside of checking in. But you should be well organized there. Here's, whether or not if you're doing things, more manually, whether you have a big oversized sign, poster, whiteboard, whatever that says, hey, Kathleen, you're, mixed doubles, 5-0, 19 plus today, right? You're on courts 7, 8, and 9. So you can exactly where it is that they need to go. We're going to start promptly at 8 o'clock. We will give you a heads up when we're ready to begin. Are they going to have referees on their courts? Are they going to be refereeing their own matches? Will they have referees at all, whether they're medal matches? Setting the expectations for players and what they can expect when they get to your event. And then for them to actually experience what you've set the expectations around. Recipe for success.
My next question was going to be, what are your strengths as an organizer? But I think you just answered right there with how organized you are and how prepped you are.
Yeah. And when you are, then the pain piece that you asked about really doesn't show itself in any sort of big way. The pain in venue selection, if you don't have a venue that's one size fits all, that can be very painful. Meaning you've got some courts that are dedicated with, dedicated nets. You've got some that have shade, some that are, that are covered, some that are not, some that are taped, some that are, have temporary nets. That can be a pain point because everybody, they're coming to a competition. They want to play on the best court available, and that's not always possible. And that is just the sign of the times. And this is still an evolving sport, right? Pickleball has been for 100 years, like some other sports. And I know people that were playing the game some 15 years ago would be glad to be on a taped court somewhere. They play on asphalt with no lines, right?
Right. Last year, I ran a tournament on a brand new municipal outdoor facility with 10 courts, but there were 3 tennis courts that the parks department said, you can use those. I'm like, I was so tempted to. That meant I could get more people into the tournament, but I'm like, the people who went on those courts would be so bummed out that, we just left them as practice courts and didn't use them in the tournament. Yeah. But like you said, people, they want to be on the best courts available.
See, that's very smart because you weighed participation versus experience. And that is a real important tip to give to people as well, because you can cram them in. I mean, I call pickleball like crack for people. They want their crack, right? And sometimes no matter how bad that crack is, but you want to give them a great experience. And sometimes that means not everybody can get in and play.
Right. What is your favorite like format for brackets?
Okay. For me, I come from a from the time I was little, very competitive family. We competed in everything. So for me, I'm a competitor, and my favorite format for me on that is, double elimination. I got to come prepared to win, right? So that's for me. I realize that pickleball is more of a social sport in a lot of cases, and many people that are getting exposed to the game maybe never had played sport, much less played in tournament. So that it's more of a, I want to socialize. I want to have fun. I want to play as many games. I want as much bang for my buck as I can get, right? And so that's, would be more appropriate for someone else. But for someone like me that grew up being a competitor, if I didn't want to be two and done, I had to go practice and work harder and get better and, come and be ready to compete.
Wow, that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for a double elimination, what is your ideal number of teams and number of courts?
I don't, I guess, on a double elimination, because in pickleball, as you know, you're playing all your brackets out in one day. So for me to feel like I had a really competitive type bracket, but yet, I didn't kill myself by playing a
Right.
day, that would be a 16, team type bracket. Maybe I could stretch it to 24 if I want to really get myself in some good shape. And, but you could run those on 16 courts, Kathleen.
I wish we had 16 courts around where I am.
Well, you can run them on less, but you just want to give, so you could do it on an 8 court, but you want to make sure that back to the scheduling properly. And that, that it's just going to take a little bit longer to play something that's a 16 court bracket, because it's going to take you an extra hour basically to get through the first round, and then so forth and so on. But once you get past that first round, you'll unplug a little bit, as long as you're not pumping other brackets in to be starting those courts as well. Staggered start times are very important. Not everybody understands that. They think, okay, I'm going to start at 8. I'm bringing everybody in at 8 o'clock. Next thing you know, people are wondering why they're not playing till noon. I like to think that things have matured in that area, but I can tell you some 11 years ago when I first came in running events, that wasn't always happening. I mean, it's like everybody in at 8 o'clock, but hey, that's how you met a lot of friends and had fun for the day.
It can work with round robins if you have enough courts.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. But for the double elimination, definitely the staggered starts.
Yeah. Well, even with round robins, it depends on, you're going to have to, like, if you're doing a men's and women's on the same day, a lot of times people want to play maybe the women's in the morning or the men's in the morning and the opposite in the afternoon, take a lunch break in the middle, some people like to do those types of things, but even still, like, we would start at 8 o'clock. We do, say we're doing a 12 court tournament. We'd start at 8 o'clock. Well, the next division may not start until 10 o'clock. These are round robins without playoffs. If you got playoffs, you got to account for the additional courts for those as well. But you could still be staggering times, even with round robins that are playing on half a day.
That's true. That's true. Is there anything new that you want to try?
I can't think of anything.
Like either team format or some type of format that you'd like to play in or organize?
Yeah, no, I know that the team formats have really gained some popularity. I've not personally felt the need to want to participate in those, but to offer them certainly is something that I think would be something to consider, because you have all kinds of flavors that you can give to pickleball players, whether there's team events, round robins with playoffs, double elimination, skinny singles. Some people have mini singles, blind draws, mixers. There's all kinds of things that you can offer. But I think, for me, you have to remember that story I just told you about being a competitor. So with that means I'm, not always anxious to try something new, because I'm used to that format that I want to compete in. So, but yes, when I take off my personal hat and think about things that we could offer as organizers, certainly team events have really gained some ground lately.
I don't think I want to be in a double elimination with you. I think I'm
Oh,
gonna get creamed for sure. I definitely not in your skill level anyway. So I'm glad I don't have to face you. Well, thank you. I do want to go back to scheduling, and if you could tell your best tips for how to go about scheduling an event. So let's assume you already have your registrations in. Where do you start? What do you do?
well, it's nice to have a tool to help you if to schedule if you can, whether you've created your own tool through an type spreadsheet, which many people have done. And you need to really understand how much court time you're going to need. So if you're doing a round robin of, let's say, 5 teams and your format's a 1 to 15, for example, on average, those matches will take about 40 minutes to play, and everybody's going to play everybody in there. So, and if you've got an organizer that kind of make sure you're keeping the tournament moving, then that should take about 2.5 hours to play. So knowing the format, so 1 to 15 is about 40 minutes. If you're doing a 2 out of 3, you need to account for about 50 to 55 minutes. If you're doing then any sort of playoffs, you want to think about your medal rounds. Those get more competitive as you go. So your bronze medals are like a 60-minute, type consideration. Your gold medals the same, 60, maybe 75 minutes in consideration. So understanding your bracket size, how many courts you'll need for those brackets, the format you're going to use, the average amount of time that it takes to play those matches are all and then I think I may have said the number of courts you have. All of those are important to understanding how then you need to be staggering your schedule. If you've got like a 6 court tournament, you know that you could start 2 of your brackets at 8 o'clock in the morning. They're going to take about 2.5 hours to play. Then you could start your next bracket, right about the 10:30 mark. So as those courts are clearing off, you're bringing in your next round.
For amateurs, have you found that 2.5 hours is kind of the sweet spot on how much play time you give them?
Um, I think it differs. Some of them can play all day. All right. And so good hours may not be enough. Others, it's like, hey, I had plenty. So, Kathleen's hard. I mean, everything is so individual. I mean, there's some people who are happy that when the round robin is finished and they wouldn't want playoffs. I've had some people be upset because there's playoffs because they feel like, hey, I just won the round robin, right? Now you're telling me I've got to go earn a gold again. And then I get some people that are upset that they show up for a round robin, that they wanted to play something that they felt was more competitive. So you're not going to make everybody happy. What we have found in pickleball is that the majority of people do like round robin play. And if they get playoffs in addition to that, that's what's preferred.
Oh, great. Great. Well, any final tips for tournament day and how to make tournament day go smoothly?
It really just, again, back in all that planning and preparation. We didn't talk about parking when I was talking about that. Parking is one of the biggest things that people need to make sure that they've accounted for, especially if they don't have enough parking on site. Prepare people to ride share, prepare people to carpool. Make sure you as an organizer have set up kind of some sort of shuttle service if there isn't anything in overflow parking that is something in which you can, walk from. So restrooms, other thing, people think about this, how many restrooms do I need for the capacity that I plan to have on a venue? If you've got a venue that only has 2 stalls and you've got, 150 people coming up in a day, you're not really gonna have enough. So, other things people don't think about is if they have to put up any temporary structures, does the city require permits for those? So you want to think about those as well. If you happen to you'll be lucky enough to get a sponsor that is a beer sponsor or some kind of alcohol sponsor, does the venue have a permit allowing either to sell or sample? Either one of those things. Do you have the right permits for those? So, so preparing your venue, making sure that your flow is set up properly for not only the players but also your vendors. People don't always think about this either. The vendors really need to be located in an area where the players are going to flow through. If they're out of sight, they're out of mind. They'll let you know about it too. You definitely want to make sure that you've thought about, the placement of your sponsors and your vendors as well, prominently in the venue that gets the proper traffic. Make sure you've thought about, food as well. Also, make sure that you've thought about AED or, medical and what to expect there if you, have an emergency. Do you have the proper procedures in place as a team, as an organizer? And making sure everybody on your team understands what their roles and responsibilities are, so that they're clear, and understanding the volunteer base that you need and any sort of volunteer training, because volunteers need to be managed. Volunteers show up at your organization and you're not prepared to properly utilize them. They'll go away frustrated and, and not have the best things to say about your event. So
It's a lot.
it is a lot.
It's a lot. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. There's some good gems in there that I learned, and I think it was really helpful. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome. Anytime. Happy to chat and help, not only with what you're doing, with anything else I can help to contribute back to.
Thank you so much. And good luck with your new role.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.